everybody, and welcome to this month's One for All. I'm just letting everybody in from the waiting room. We're expecting over 100 people today, so getting everybody in and getting us started is just taking a few minutes. I'm Hayley Monks. I'm one of the founders of the Women's Utility Network, and I will be your host today, going through the session, introducing our speaker. I'm also multitasking here and managing the waiting room and everybody who's joining as well, which is probably why I'm looking a little bit distracted. So here we go, getting everybody in, and I think we will get started with the important information around the Women's Utility Network. So some of you may not have been to a One for All at the Women's Utility Network before, and so I just thought it was a good time to give you an overview of One for All and why One for All and why we started it. So as I said, I'm one of the founding members, and we started the Women's Utility Network nearly 4 years ago. We used to do events in London, and if you've been to one of our events, they were very good social events with lots of interaction and people presenting and sharing knowledge and skills. When we went into the pandemic in April last year, we decided we would move online, and One for All was created. It was created so we had a place to drop in, to feel connected, to share, gain knowledge, get that positive interaction, talk about daily challenges, which at that time was quite challenging for a lot of people, have a designated talk time and a space for a bit of creativity as well. So that is a bit about One for All. We did them weekly all through the first lockdown at the start of the pandemic, and now we do them monthly and are continuing to do so as well. So what's coming up in terms of ahead of today's speaker, I just want to highlight a couple of things that are on our radar, ready for the coming months. So 12th of November, we are hosting an event around careers and utilities, and tickets are now available on Ticketail. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a second. And on the 24th of November, we are collaborating with Women in Public Affairs, and that is going to be a joint WUN event with them, and we'll be looking at how women can shape net zero beyond COP26. So tickets will be available for that soon as well. So look out for further events on social media and on the Women's Utility Network website. I mentioned our careers event, and I just want to take a minute to talk a bit about this, because for those of you working in utilities, and particularly in power, this has been a really challenging time. And the Women's Careers event, our careers event in utilities, has been planned for some time. So it just seems that it's the perfect timing for everybody out there. The date is the 10th of November. And on that day, we will be hosting a full day of careers and utilities. It will be hosted on Zoom. You will be able to drop into specific sessions of your choice, and those sessions will be published with the speakers and the content ahead of the event, so you can book in. A lot of the events are sponsored by our partners, and they'll not only be demonstrating the broad spectrum of careers that are available in the utility sector, but also how you might get into some of those roles and those opportunities, as well as sharing with us current vacancies that are available. And there's a huge selection out there at the moment. So a great time for people who are wishing to review their career, or actually are looking for a new opportunity because they've recently become unemployed. So don't forget to join us 10th of November. It's a virtual event, and you can join for the hour, or you can join for the day. So moving on from that, onto today's agenda. As I said, my name is Hayley Monks. I'm one of the co-founders of WUN, as well as managing director of Think, Inspire, Create. And I'd like to introduce today's speaker. and clearly a very popular speaker, because whilst I'm talking to you here, I'm still watching the waiting room and participants joining. So it's a very popular event today. I'd like to welcome Caroline Sargent. So Caroline is a certified positive psychology coach and NLP practitioner. I think that's neuro linguistic programming, Caroline, but I'm sure you can correct me if I'm wrong there. And following a range of roles in HR and L&D and talent, she took the leap to set up her own business. And Caroline is the founder of the Bounce Club. And what she's going to be talking to us today is about resilience. And I think it couldn't be a more perfect time to be having this conversation. I think it's a really challenging time, not only for the sectors that we're operating in, but for women in those sectors as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Caroline to introduce herself and talk about today's topic. I will be keeping an eye on the waiting room and any technical issues. If you have any challenges, then please just message me. Caroline, over to you.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Hayley. Welcome everyone to this session. As I said, my name is Caroline Sargent and I'm really excited to be here with you today. And I am intrigued when Hayley's mentioned about the numbers, and I can see the numbers still going up as we're waiting to start the session as well. This really is a topic that I think is really, really common, really popular. And I think actually the last 12 to 18 months have made this even more of a challenge for many of us. So we're going to be talking in the next 45 minutes or so all about resilience, about self-belief, and really spending a little bit of time together with lots of positive interaction, which I know is one of the themes of the network, to share thoughts and ideas of how you can nobble the wobbles. And this is an expression that you may have heard, you may not have heard, but this is the term that I use within my business Bounce to talk about all those things that we might be putting in our own way. So whether it's our confidence, whether it's our limiting beliefs, whether it's just worries or anxiety, but anything that might be in our mind that is stopping us achieving what we may want to achieve. So the focus of today is to be bolder, braver, and even more brilliant than you are already. I am very interactive, so I hope it's okay with all of you that I'm not just going to talk at you for 40 minutes. There will be various opportunities as we go through to join in, share your thoughts. There's a couple of actual competitions as we go through as well, so to keep focus. And if you have any questions as we go, please pop those in the chat box and we can come to those at the end of today. So to start us off, I just want to share with you a quote. I'm not sure I've got access, Hayley. So just on the first slide, there's a quote and a stat that I just want to share with you, which is that 1 in 2 women feel more self-doubt than self-love. And this is taken from something called the Global Self-Love Index, which was done earlier on this year and surveyed 22,000 women across 21 countries. Probably not surprising, but basically that 1 in 2 of us that are even here today on any given day may feel more self-doubt than self-love. And you probably know what it is I'm talking about. It's that little voice, or maybe a few little voices that we hear in our head that's telling us we're not good enough, that's telling us, why are you even trying to achieve that thing? Because you're never going to get there. You're not going to achieve it. You haven't got the skills that you need. People will just look at you and laugh at you and think, why are you even doing that? So it's that voice that's like our inner critic. That's where the wobbles are coming from. But what I'd love to share with you in the session today, that actually that inner critic doesn't have to be our enemy. How do we make that inner critic our friend? And what are some of the techniques and the psychological tools that we can use to shift the way we sometimes think about ourselves and turn that inner critic to the inner coach? So I'd just love you to think about, what was the last thing you told yourself? And if you could just pop that in the chat box. So what was the last thing you told yourself? Was it you looked yourself in the mirror and said how wonderful you are, or was it something else? Nadia's got one. Starting us off, Nadia, you're taking long to do this. I am good enough. Karen, I love there's a positive thought coming through. I can't do this. You need to sleep more. There's some great advice that you're giving yourselves as well. You're going to be okay with this. See a few more coming through. you need to get back, don't mention that, you look silly, brain feels full. There's so many, because there's so many on you, I can see them whizzing through. Some of the advice, you're giving yourself some real positive advice, so actually that inner coach is coming through, but quite a lot of you, I can see the word silly and confidence popping up a lot. So there's things that you're saying to yourself that are getting in your own way. Hayley, are we all right just to move the slides on, because I haven't got control at the moment? Okay, so jumping on to the next one, just imagine you're on a bus, and if you get on a bus anymore, or maybe you're walking down the road and you see a parent crouched down next to a child, and as you walk past, you can hear the conversation that the parent's having with the kind of finger pointed, and that parent is saying things like, "Oh, you idiot, you completely messed that up. What do you know anyway? Why did you even try? You know you're no good at this. Why would you even try in the first place? And look what everybody's looking at you now. What do you think they're thinking about you? You'd never be successful at this. You're never going to be able to do this." If you heard that as you're walking past a parent talking to a child, you would want to say something. You would want to stop and kind of step in, and you'd probably never, ever talk to your own children like that. But actually, we often talk to ourselves in that way. And again, that's that inner voice. And what that voice is trying to do, it's actually trying to help us. It's trying to protect us, because it's coming from a place of safety, saying, I can see that precipice of your comfort zone. Don't go near it. Don't step out of your comfort zone. I'm going to put all these beliefs in your head to save you. But actually, in order to get the most out of life and to grow, we know that we need to be living our life on the edge of that comfort zone, a bit like a bouncy castle, constantly developing and growing from that as well. And the more we're on the edge of the comfort zone, actually the louder that inner voice is going to be. So on the next slide, I'm going to talk to you about what today's session is all about. And this session is called Nobble the Wobbles. So nobble those wobbles that are holding you back. So whether it's a fear that you have, whether it's a voice and a self-belief that's getting in your way, whether it's something that you want to just supercharge and have more energy to achieve the goals that you're setting yourself. These are all the sorts of things that we're going to focus on today. And ultimately, it's about just having a few tools in your toolbox to help retrain your brain. And it sounds really easy. Some of the tips hopefully are quite easy, but it won't be easy. It will take a little bit of time to shape a new habit, because your brain will want to hang on to those limiting beliefs that it's been telling you for years and years and years that have been holding you back. And it'll be a little bit like when you've taken your child to a toy shop or Smith Superstore and they've just seen the new Christmas toy range and you're trying to get them to leave the shop. That's what it will be like in your mind, your brain really trying to hang on to those limiting beliefs that actually are getting in your own way. So before we get stuck into the session, I just want to say a little bit more about me and the work that I do and some of the wobbles that I've had. So on the next slide, there's some information all about me. So I'm an accredited positive potential coach. As Hayley's already said, I've got 15 years experience and counting in various different industries, but mainly utilities, manufacturing and automotive. And I left those industries about 6-7 years ago now to set up my own business. And that was the key tipping point, I think, in my career, where I stopped listening to the wobbles. And I decided I wasn't going to take actions and decisions based on the voice in my head, but I was going to follow my heart and overcome those. And I am the founder of something called the Bounce Club, which I know we've got some members that have joined us today, which is a place for women to come together that want more balance and more brilliance in their lives. But probably more importantly to share with you in the session today is that I have wobbles all the time. And I did wonder whether to share this with you, because I sometimes think, no, I'm going to show up as somebody who's really confident, who has no wobbles at all. I'm the expert in how to manage it. But actually on a daily basis, I am managing my wobbles. So just on the next slide, I want to share with you a couple of examples of when through my life I started these wobbles. So the first one I remember being 4 or 5 years old, excuse the hair on all these pictures, by the way, but 4 or 5 years old, going to school on my very first day. And I remember my mum telling me how the teachers thought I was really bold, I was really confident, I was already asking questions. But every day when she walked me up the slope to that school gate, she could feel me shaking as she was holding my hand. Later on in my life at school, kind of in senior school, I pushed myself really hard. So I am a perfectionist. I like to really challenge what I do. But as I challenge things, those wobbles kick in. So the second thing I want to share with you is I was head girl. So when I was head girl, again, bad hair, and when I was head girl, some people would say, brilliant, what an achievement. But I didn't actually feel like that. So I loved the opportunity that I had. I loved being able to represent the school, but I was constantly looking around thinking, why did they pick me? Why did they vote for me? Surely other people would do a better job. And that happened throughout the year of being head girl. Then a few years later, I went to university, and I went to Oxford University. And again, amazing opportunity to be able to go to Oxford, and I studied French. But I had a big case of what I call the moz. So this is the musts, the ought tos, and the shoulds. So I went to Oxford University because I felt like that's what was expected of me. It wasn't truly what I wanted to do, but my family was so proud. They were telling all the neighbours, all the friends and family, and I'd kind of fallen into this trap of, I need to be this person, I need to live this life. And because of that, throughout my 4 years at university, I had a lot of wobbles. And I was waiting to be found out. I did the same entrance exams, I did the same 3-day interviews as everybody else, but I was always waiting to be told, oh, we got it wrong, you shouldn't be here. And that was confounded with one of the kind of tipping points again that I remember in my life. In my first week at Oxford, I was in the freshers bar and somebody came up to me, a fellow student, and I thought, oh, brilliant, I'm gonna make a friend, get to know somebody. And they said, oh, I can tell from your accent, you twang, you're from up north. Yep, I'm from Blackpool. And the thing they said back to me is just always stuck with me, which was, oh, they let all sorts in nowadays, did they? So throughout my life, there's been moments that have just created the wobble. That's where that wobble continued and carried on at university. And then the final experience that I want to share with you was when I set up my business. So just before I set up my business, I took one of my biggest steps in my career into a European talent role at Avon Cosmetics. And I went from a company where I'd worked for many, many years in the automotive industry, where I knew everybody. And I applied for this job because I thought, oh, that's quite a big step, but let's give it a go. And when I got this job, I remember them telling me from the agency, oh, you're the wild card. And again, that created this wobble in me that I'm the wild card. What does that mean? Maybe I'm something a bit different. Maybe I'm not quite ticking all the boxes, but I did get the job, which was brilliant. And I loved my time in Avon, but I always then had this wobble of, I'm the wild card. So I've constantly got to prove myself. I can see quite a few people commenting to say their accent's been picked up on as well. So yeah, quite a few of you are identifying, I think, with these things here. So my wobbles have always been there. So I did want to be very open. And what I'm going to share with you is some of the techniques that I use now and I use with my coaching clients as well to help overcome some of those wobbly moments that I have. And actually to get to the point where you make a decision to say, I'm not going to be defined by my past. I'm not going to be defined by what other people say. I'm not going to be defined by those musts, oughts and shoulds, but I'm making a decision to be the person that I know I can be as well. So I'd love to know in the chat box, just for a moment, if you haven't already shared, think of what was that moment that really sticks with you where you feel a wobble got in your way. So when did a wobble get in your way? I can see all the Northerners coming through here in the chat box. So has there ever been a moment where you told yourself something? There we go. Whenever I'm promoted, I always think this is my ceiling, okay? The more I know about you, the less I like. Wow. When I became a mum, that's a classic wobble. I think many of us on here will identify. When I returned from maternity leave, am I still good enough? What am I doing here? There's so many wobbles that you're sharing. So this isn't new. This isn't new stuff. This is things that we're all managing with and all challenging ourselves on all the time. So what I'd love you to do is take one of those wobbles. Quite a few of you, I can see, are returning mums as well. But take one of those things that you've been telling yourself that maybe you think has been holding you back a little bit, and just write that down in front of you for a moment, because we're going to keep coming back to that for the rest of the session to see if by the end of the session, we can nobble that a little bit. Maybe we can flip it on its head or choose not to listen to it. So write that big wobble that's been getting in your way down, and we're going to start working through that. So as I say, I had lots of wobbles. I still have wobbles. I have one right now, the 10 minutes before you all joined. I was still having a little bit of a wobble as we're coming into this. But there did come a tipping point. And I just want to share with you a quote on the next couple of slides, which is the quote I use to kind of have as the title of the session. So just on the next one. And this quote is, "It's not who you are that holds you back, it's who you think you're not." And somebody shared this with me about 7 years ago, which coincidentally was just before I chose to take the leap and go self-employed and set up Bounce. And that was a point that really sticks with me, where I thought, you know what? I'm going to listen to the wobbles, because there might be some things I need to work around and some realistic blockers I need to work through, but I'm not going to let those define me anymore. They stopped me. Those thoughts in my head stopped me setting up my business many, many years ago. It's a dream I've always had. I absolutely love the work that I do and working with the people that I work with. That was the point when I heard this quote that I thought, actually, I'm not holding myself back anymore. I'm going to be the person I know I can be. And that's what I'm going to encourage all of you to do today, in the rest of the session, and beyond today as well. And I have a quick competition over the slide. So in the chat box, I would love to know, how many thoughts do we have each day? So give me a number. On average, how many thoughts, conscious, subconscious, or we're awful? It's like Bruce's bonus here, 5 million. Who's had that many thoughts? That's amazing, whoever put that one. 25. Such a range, 200 plus. You might be sleeping if you're only having 200. 1 million, 1 million. What a range. I feel like I should do higher, lower. So we actually have, on average, between 60 and 80,000 thoughts every day. I mean, that is incredible, isn't it? Between 60 and 80,000 thoughts. And of those thoughts, what percentage do you think are negative? And there is a curly whirly for the first person that gets this right. These are my Bounce prizes. They're very high demand. Oh, 70. I saw a 70. I didn't see who it was. I'll go back and get that after. So 70% of our thoughts are negative. So Hayley, if we didn't mind just jumping over a slide. So if 70% of our thoughts are negative, that actually means that on average, every 1.5 seconds, we are having a negative thought. So every 1.5 seconds, we are kind of beating ourselves up and hitting ourselves over the head. And you'll see there's an image on here of a little ant. Apologies to anybody who has a bit of a fear of ants. But the ant is on there because psychologists call this our ants. So our automatic negative thoughts, of which we have thousands, tens of thousands a day. And they kind of nibble away. We might not always be aware that they're happening. We might be very conscious that they're happening. But a bit like an ant's nest, you will usually see them everywhere you go. And they can do quite a lot of damage. So I have ants outside the front of my house that can move tarmac on my drive. And that's, if you think about that happening in our heads, and if we're believing those automatic negative thoughts, there's a lot that we could be getting in our own way there. And we all have a bias. So some of us might be more positive minded. Some of us might start with critique and the criticism. But a little bit of science here for you, that you probably already know this, but depending which thought we're choosing, that has a big impact on how our brain works, how our body works, and our general well-being as well. So if we're having lots of these ants, lots of these negative thoughts, that's increasing the stress hormone of cortisol that's whizzing through our body. It's taking the energy away from our thinking brain right into that reaction, that emotional brain. And therefore we can't think, we can't work effectively. So actually that limiting belief that we're having, that we're not good enough, becomes a reality because we can't perform in the way that we would want to because we're panicking about it. Whereas if we can turn those ants into pets, which is a positive, energizing thought, we release less cortisol, the stress hormone, and instead we replace that with boosts of serotonin and dopamine, so the real feel-good hormones that are going to boost our mood, widen our creativity, and boost our attention as well. So someone is just saying, I've been distracted. Someone said in the comments that they're eating a curly whirly as we speak. But it's really interesting to think about, which is your mindset? Are you the sort of person who has more limiting beliefs and that negative thought? Or do you have more of the positive thought? And how can you shift beneath the two? So in a second, I'm going to give you some hints and tips of how you can overcome these wobbles and how you can get rid of some of those ants and the automatic negative thoughts. But before I do that, I do have a bit of a disclaimer over on the next slide. And this is something that I've talked about with a few of you that I know are on here. And the disclaimer that I have is, we do have lots of bias. We know that. I'm sure many of you have been on many different trainings and talk a lot around unconscious bias in the workplace, and many of the biases that we as women face as well. But one of the ones that I think is really important to pull out for our session today is something that's called confirmation bias, because our brain likes to be right. So if we're telling ourselves we're not good enough, it will only spot the things that prove that to ourselves. So it will remind you of the moments where things went wrong, or it will remind you of the times where you didn't quite deliver as you expected. So that's something to watch out on. And there's another watch out, which is called the wobble watch out, because I don't want you going away from today thinking, actually, I've got to get rid of all my negative thoughts, because they're there for a reason. So just over on the next slide is the disclaimer. Big disclaimer. This is something that I've talked with Angie Needle about quite a lot within Cadent, but it is okay to wobble. So this isn't just about changing all your thoughts, but we said earlier that those wobbles are there for a reason. They're there to protect us and to keep us safe. So actually, it's really important to stop, to pause and listen to what our mind is telling us, and then to argue with it and make sense of, is this getting in my way or is this helping me? And I know there's a few of you on here who, from a wobble point of view, are very open with your emotions. So maybe if you are feeling under pressure or you've had some sort of feedback, you may get quite emotional in front of people. And I have a lot of coaching clients who say, help me hide those emotions, because I can't be a great leader. I can't progress if I cry, or I can't progress if I show that I'm frustrated or I'm angry. But actually, you absolutely can. And studies show that the more we can show those little cracks in our armor, the more vulnerable we can be, the more people around us will connect with us, because they see we're human. We're not a robot as well. Shana's there saying, I think vulnerability is key to leadership. Absolutely. People want to connect with a human being. They don't want to connect with a robot. That's just not going to happen. And I think you can help boost performance, you boost engagement, but most importantly, by showing your wobbles sometimes, you show everyone else around you it is okay to be you. And I think that is an absolutely key in the workplace as well. So the task for all of us is knowing which of the wobbles are helping me and actually which are getting in my way. So there's a lovely quote over the slide that says, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. I love this. This is an oldie, you've probably seen it before, but whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Because again, our brain likes to prove itself right. So whatever is going on in your mind, whatever wobbles you're having, your brain and your body will start to make a reality as well. So I have a quick other competition. I've got a few curly willies. I've got a multi-pack, so there's a few more to give away. So what I'd love to do is play a quick 2-minute game of what I call belief bingo. So I'd like you to grab a bit of paper or a post-it, and I'd like you to write down what are the 3 beliefs, limiting beliefs or wobbles that you say to yourself the most. So what are the 3 beliefs or wobbles that you say to yourself the most? Okay, and then I have a little bag here with the top 20 limiting beliefs, and we're going to do a bit of bingo. So I'll read them out, and as you get them, as you get all your 3 ticked off, pop a bingo in the chat box. Okay, are we all ready? Have we all got 3? Some of you might have 10 or 20 by now. You might be playing to strengths. Okay, so let's go. First one that I've got, let's give it a shake then. Let's have a look. So I've got, I shouldn't be looking, should I? That's not the rules. I will only fail, so why bother trying? If anybody's got that, tick it off your list. Okay, I've got, I can't be me. That's a pretty deep one. What other limiting beliefs have I got? I'm not something enough. So if anybody's got, I'm not old enough, I'm not young enough, I'm not clever enough, I'm not smart enough, anything like that with the words I'm not enough in, tick that off. We have to burn these at the end. Bingo, Jamie's got bingo. Oh, there's a few of you. Jamie, Karen, you've got bingo already. Angie's there, she's got 2 of those. Okay, so quite a few of you kicking those off already. So I'm not something enough, I'm not living up to expectations I set for myself, I can't be me, and I'll only fail. So why bother trying? I've got loads more in here. Type in the chat box. What other ones have you got? Not that I want to encourage the limiting beliefs, but we'll get rid of these in a second. I can't do this. I can't do this. Quite a few of you have got that one really common. I'm not allowed. There's a key thing about we don't give ourselves permission to be ourselves and to be happy. And we probably put everyone else first. That's the mozzes, the must, the oughts, the shoulds. I'm too honest. I'm not qualified. Everyone else is better than me. You're all on a roll. One day they'll realize I don't know what I'm doing. That's a really common one, isn't it? The imposter syndrome, that's often called. I'm going to get found out. I let things limit me. Olivia, I'm only a mum, nothing else. You are being a mum, let's just pause for a moment. That is massive and everything. You're a mum, you're a chauffeur, you're a cook, you're a counsellor, you're a job expert, you're a first aider, all those things that go into that role, as well as everything else that you're doing as well. So there's lots of different limiting beliefs, and I'll have a look over those later on throughout the session as well. Lots of different things we might be saying to ourselves that could be getting in the way. So the key question is, choose one of those. You may already have written it down, and let's have a look at what can I do about it? So how can I bounce back from that? How can I tell myself a different story? So what this is called is how you can nobble your wobbles. And there's a fundamental technique that I use, which is just over the slide. And I use this with myself. I use it with my coaching clients as well. And this is something called I'll take my teeth out, but the worry wallow window. Don't say that with marshmallows in your mouth. So it's a worry wallow window. And this is all about plan time to worry. Because actually, you can't just put a lid on limiting beliefs or wobbles. You can't just ignore them and hope they go away, because if you do that, they kind of fester a little bit. They start to build up, and then they probably come out and block you when you least expect it. So a lot of psychiatrists use this, and counselors and psychotherapists. It's about plan a time in your day, literally put it in your diary and say 4 o'clock, that is the time for my worry wallow. And that is a time where I'm going to listen to those things that are on my mind. I'm going to air them. I'm going to make sense of them. I'm going to challenge them, and I'm going to take action from the ones that are useful to me. And then I'm going to choose what I'm going to do with the ones that are getting in my way. And if I feel those worries and those beliefs come in at any other time of day, that's okay. Park it, because it's not the window for my worry wallow right now. I should have used different words. It's very hard to say that out loud. So let me walk you through. There's 5 steps of a worry wallow that I'll show you over the next slide. So these are, and I'll talk through each in turn. The first one is wave, then wait, watch, wobble, and wonder. Okay, so let's go through each in turn. And there's some little techniques that you might choose to do now, or maybe make a note of, and let me know how you get on beyond the session. So the first step of your worry wallow is wave. So what wave is all about is acknowledge that that worry or that limiting belief is there in the first place, because it isn't going to go away, even if you try and put that lid on it. So there's a fabulous exercise that you can do, which when I came across this exercise, it was life-changing, and it is so simple. But it's really important that when we're having that wobble, to actually detach ourselves from that voice in our head, because actually that voice in our head, it isn't us. And yet we often let it define who we are and what we choose to do. So just flipping on to the next slide, there's a quick exercise, which is basically, what does your wobble look like? So I'd love you all to try this with me for a minute or two. So look at that phrase that you've written down. So that belief that's holding you back. Okay, and just close your eyes for a second if you're comfortable to do so. And I want you to hear the voice that is saying that phrase to you. And just notice your gut reaction. So what does that voice sound like? Is it male, female, old, young? Maybe it's not a male or female at all. Maybe it's something completely different. Does it sound kind? Does it sound mean? What's the tone of that voice? And then take it just a little bit further and think about, is there a picture that goes with that voice? Is there a character? Maybe it's an existing character that you see on the TV, or as a child, some sort of cartoon character. Or maybe it's just something that you can create for yourself, like a little monster or something like that. And then give your character a name. So what's the name of that voice? What is it wearing? What does it eat for breakfast? Anything that you can do to turn that voice into a physical character that you can then interact with more. And when you've got a little bit more of a picture, just open your eyes. So let's hear some first reactions in the chat box. So can anybody happy to share what's the character of that wobble that you have in your head? What does it look like? I'm intrigued. I'm looking at the chat box with intrigue now. Scatty cow, that's a good one to start us off, Karen. A former boss. So Diana's really identifying, that's a really interesting one. So that voice, that critique possibly is sticking with you from previous emotions and previous relationships as well. Captain Caveman, Darth Vader, a squiggly mess. I love it. Cartoon dragon, cartoon monster. So they're all a little bit different. And this is a brilliant, I think this is a fabulous exercise. So mine, I didn't want to influence, but mine is Miss Trunchbull from Matilda. But I have a trick because she's mean. She's like a real mean girl. She's really nasty. And actually, I don't want to listen. When I think of that voice in my head, like Miss Trunchbull, I don't want to connect with her. I don't want to listen to her because I don't feel like she's doing it because she's got my back. She's just being nasty as well. And actually, I have a little technique where I can make her a bit smaller, because if I make Miss Trunchbull much smaller, it doesn't feel as intimidating in my head. And I can turn the volume down on her as well, which means I'm not going to listen to her as much. But for those of you who've got to a point where you have a picture or a character, it means you've detached yourself in your mind from that wobble, which now means it's easier to do something about it, to have a conversation. So next time you're going into a situation or a challenge and you hear the old boss, a few of you have said that, so that old boss talking to you, acknowledge it. Oh, hello. Nice to see you. Here you are again. What have you got to say to me today? And you can actually have a bit of a conversation and then go, that's really helpful. Thank you for sharing. But you know what? I've got this all under control. I don't need you right now. So that very first step of nobbling the wobbles is wave, say hello and acknowledge the character, acknowledge the voice and welcome them in to have a conversation. Second step is wait. So it sounds really simple, but often where things go wrong is we react in the moment. So just jumping over to the next slide, let's have a look at wait. There we go. So rather than reacting in the moment and thinking, oh, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to apply for that job, I'm going to walk away from that feedback because that panic is set in, actually just sit with it. And this is all the power of great studies on mindfulness around your emotions will come and go. And I firmly believe that actually a limiting belief isn't a thought, it's an emotion. And it's an emotion that was probably set in our mind many, many years ago from something that happened, maybe at school or with an old boss, or as a child, or something our parents told us. And we remember how we felt in that moment. And we remember the words that were associated with how we felt. And that's what we're now telling ourselves now in that wobble. So wait and have a think about, actually, how am I feeling right now? And I love this model. I'm sure some of you might have seen this before, but this is the emotions and feeling wheel. So it's great with kids as well. But if you're saying, actually, I feel really angry, well, what type of anger is it you're feeling? You can see how you can break it down, how it could mean something quite different. Maybe it's a jealousy, maybe it's a resentment. Maybe I'm just blooming angry and I'm really frustrated. But sit with that emotion for a while to really recognize, what is it? The third step then of nobbling your wobbles is watch. And this, alongside drawing your character, this is one of my favorites. I use this a lot with my coaching clients. So we have the power to manage and control our own thoughts. We have a choice about what we choose to think about ourselves. And it may not feel like it, but that's often because we're in the scene. So if you imagine your life like a movie, often we feel like we are the character. We're watching ourselves and it's all playing out around us and we don't have any control. So what if you imagine your life like a movie where you're the director? So step out of the film. And I'm going to give you what you can see on the screen there. And this is a lovely tool to create for yourself in your mind. So imagine you have a remote control, or a flicker, as I call it, or whatever you call it. And you can design your own buttons on this remote control that when those wobbles kick in are going to help you manage those. So for me, for example, I have a really big pause button right in the middle, because when I start feeling those wobbles, the first thing that I need to do is just press pause, not let them build up anymore, and take stock. Why am I feeling this way? What's going on for me? What other buttons might you want on your remote control? Rewind, mute, I love mute, absolutely. Turn the volume down, husband mute. We're taking this, see, all these techniques are so useful in other areas of our lives as well. Changing the internal, zooming out, brilliant. There's a lot of themes there, isn't there, around if you take that image, that thing that you're worried about, make it more blurry, make it further away, turn the volume down so it's not distracting you or taking your attention anymore. It feels much more manageable because it isn't here. It's suddenly this tiny speck on your screen. A little bit like, I think it's the Star Wars movies, isn't it? Where at the beginning they have the words and they kind of zone out, like in a galaxy far, far away. Imagine if you could do that to that belief and that wobble. Change the channel, absolutely. How can you just press the button and switch it off? So it's a great technique when you're stuck in a wobble to think about, actually, I do have control. Let me get my remote out. What button do I need to press right now to step out, to pause, to rewind, or to fast forward? The other one that I would really recommend having on there is a record button, because in our brains, our negative memories and thoughts and experience are 8 times stickier than the positive ones. So let's get a really good record button to remember all those real positive things and those positive emotions. There we go, recording of previous achievements, absolutely. And that's going to come on to one of our next steps in a moment. So that's step 3, is watch. Step 4, moving on to the next slide, is wobble the wobbles. And what you see here on the slide is just a quick thought tree that I use with a lot of coaching clients to really challenge the wobble, challenge that thought that you're telling yourself. Would it stand up in a court of law? What's the evidence for this? Is it really a belief? Do I remember a time when I didn't believe this, when maybe something was different? What are the facts? So if I'm telling myself I'm not good enough, well, what are the facts for that? That's a feeling. What proof have I got? And actually, more importantly, what proof have I got where I am good enough? A bit like Isabel said in the chat about rewinding and recording all those previous achievements and reminding myself of those. So it's really important to test the waters and wobble that belief a little bit. And there's another technique that you can use. So if you have that character that we created earlier, you can wobble that character. Now, what I mean by that is that statement that you wrote down, that belief that you're really getting stuck on in life at the moment. When you say that to yourself, it can probably sound quite harsh or quite mean or judgmental. But imagine if you sang that to yourself to the tune of Happy Birthday. Sounds strange, but suddenly it doesn't feel quite as harsh anymore. Or imagine if your character has a really silly voice. Again, it wouldn't feel as intimidating or as judgmental anymore. And if you have your remote control and you've got the mute, or you can turn the volume down, again, you're turning down the impact that that wobble is having on you and your mind. So the final one, the final step to nobbling your wobbles is my absolute favorite. And though the members of the Bounce Club that are on here know that we do whole workshops on this particular one, but this is wonder. And we know that our brains are biased. We know that our brains will be drawn to the things we're thinking about and make those a reality. So just imagine if we obsessed more about what makes us great than what makes us not so great. Just imagine if we spent more time on that. So I do an exercise, which is a really simple exercise, but I have this magic mirror. It's probably going to flash in your face as I hold it. Okay. Doesn't look particularly exciting, pretty bog standard, big mirror, but this is called the Mirror of Awesomeness. And this is a mirror that I make myself use. I make some of my clients and my friends use as well. But this is magic because every time you look in this mirror, you can't help but tell yourself how wonderful you are. So when you look in this mirror, you remember all your achievements, all the things that you've done, all the strengths that you bring every single day with all the interactions that you have. You remember all the great feedback and positive feedback of the impact that you have on the people around you. And there's one phrase that I'd love you to write down. And if you want to share that in the chat box as well, that would be fabulous. So I'd love you to answer the phrase or finish the phrase, I am bloody brilliant because ... So I'd love to see as many of those as possible as you look into the Mirror of Awesomeness. I am bloody brilliant because... It takes a bit longer. It's taking you longer to do this than it is to put your limiting beliefs in the chat box. There we go. Joe's kicked us off. I'm a working mum. I'm caring. I juggle. I'm happy. I stand up for what I believe in. So have a read and keep reading your own and keep saying it to yourself. We can't hear you. You're all on mute. So if you want to kind of imagine you have that mirror of awesomeness, say that phrase to yourself. I know Andrew particularly likes this exercise, but I am bloody brilliant because... say it and say it and say it until your brain starts to believe it. And being brilliant isn't about being perfect. It's about being real and accepting that we've got our flaws, we've got our things that aren't quite 100%, but we are amazing because of those things, not despite them as well. I'm loving reading all these things. There we go. I make things happen. I get stuff done. I achieve whatever I put my mind to. So many things. And I'm sure I really encourage you to do this every day or every morning when you get out of bed and you're brushing your teeth in the bathroom. Have a look in that Mirror of Awesomeness. It will now suddenly change when you look into it and remind yourself, what am I bloody brilliant at? So just jumping onto the final slide that I want to share with you. And I do this at the end of all my sessions, but I think it's really important just to take a moment to breathe, to take stock. And again, I just encourage you to close your eyes for a moment. Take a few deep breaths in and out. And in and out. And I'm just going to share some words with you and feel free to say them as I say them and kind of repeat after me as well. I am a strong and courageous woman. I own my strength and step into my power. I am safe and loved. I say yes to myself. I make the world a better place. I choose calm. I choose hope. I choose joy. I can do whatever I put my mind to. I make my own decisions. I overcome my challenges. I leap out of my comfort zone. I am bold. I am brave. I believe in me. I am enough. I am flawsome. And when you're ready, just wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, and open your eyes. And I just want to share the last slide with you before we go to questions, because I love this. I love this expression. I was saying to Hayley earlier, I'm one for words, and I love WUN and everything that stands for with WUN. But I think this is so important. So I hope that's been a really useful session for you. I'm sure it sparked some thought. There's a lot for me to go back and have a look at in the chat box as well, and send some curly whirlies out. But I really encourage you to keep talking to yourself as you would talk to your best friend. Keep accepting yourself for all the fabulous things that you are, and reminding yourself in that mirror of awesomeness how brilliant you are every single day. And don't forget that there is only one you, and that is your superpower, and that is what makes you flawsome. So thank you so much. Massive thank you to Helen and Hayley and the other founders and Angie for inviting me to the session today. I would love to connect with you. I think you've got my details through the network. If any, I can see all your faces, how fabulous. If anyone would like to connect with me through LinkedIn, would love to do that, or to find out more about the Bounce Club as well. But I wish you all the very best for nobbling your wobbles as the day goes on. So Hayley, I'll pass back over to you.
Thanks, Caroline. That was absolutely brilliant. And it was great to see so much interaction, engagement. We do have a few minutes. If anybody has any particular questions they would like to ask Caroline, if you want to put them in the chat, please feel free to ask any questions. I'm sure she'll be delighted to answer them.
Absolutely. If I've not sent you all to sleep with that final meditation, it's my trick. Angie, what's the difference between men and women? It's a really interesting one, Angie, and I think you guys probably know the answer to that. So from a self-belief and limiting beliefs, there are actually studies show there isn't much of a difference internally, but I think the difference is that women can sometimes almost listen to those beliefs more. So we block ourselves more and don't take action, whereas I think men feel them, acknowledge them, just push through them regardless. So I think it takes more energy from ourselves, because often we're tapping into our emotions even more as well. We're letting those get in the way. So it takes more energy to really focus and think, is this a realistic belief? Is this helping me? Or is this something that I just need to process, put in its box and overcome as well? And look at the questions. How do you overcome those who judge those who are emotional in business? Oh, I love this. This is like a whole day's conversation. I can see a few of you getting excited. So I work with lots of leaders, female and male, and often actually I work more with male leaders where this is something we work on. I think there's a couple of things going on. So I think for the individual who's feeling judged, I think there's a reflection there around looking into yourself. What is it that you're feeling judged on? And how is that making you feel? And what conversation do you need to have? Because I think it's really important to feel authentic still to who you are. And I shared earlier that actually wearing your heart on your sleeve, I once got told off in a previous company, won't name the company, but my performance review said, oh, I'm gonna have to mark you down because you wear your heart on your sleeve. I left that company, to be honest, because I thought, well, I do wear my heart on my sleeve and that's one of my strengths. So this is me. You get what you see. So you do build connection a lot more if you show that vulnerability that we talked about earlier. But actually, I think when people are judging you for that, that says more about them and their wobbles about, I don't know how to deal with that vulnerability because my blockers are very high and I don't feel comfortable being vulnerable about myself. So sometimes I think it's having an open conversation. If it's a boss, for example, that's saying, no, you shouldn't be crying after a meeting because you're getting emotional about something, it's having a conversation about, well, let me explain to you what's behind that emotion. You see tears, let me talk to you about what's driving that. And it's probably because I'm really passionate about what I'm talking about. I don't know if that helps, Victoria. Look, I'm seeing lots of conversations about bosses that we've learned from that weren't particularly helpful, and Jen saying that your new boss embraces that, wearing your heart on your sleeve, which is amazing. I bet that feels really different. I can't see you, Jen, on the video, but I bet that feels so different, having a boss that just allows you to be you. It's amazing, and it's quite rare. So if you get one of those, hang on to them. I'm making eye contact with a few as I talk. Emotions, passion, Karen. When a leader says, I find you difficult, what do they mean? Oh, that's a challenging one, isn't it, Karen? So it might mean that they're finding the conversation difficult and they're finding the relationship difficult because it's so different to them and their approach. So I think with that one, again, if you're feeling comfortable, I go back and have a conversation about, you use the word difficult, help me understand that. what can I help you with? What can I help you understand more about me and how to get the best out of me?
Thank you, Caroline.
Yeah,
that was really, really excellent. And I think we probably could stay here for hours.
I know, I'm still looking for more questions.
Well, I was getting a bit winning because my feedback once was that I was an enigma.
Oh.
I think, well, yeah, exactly. What do you
do with that? I mean, what?
I know. Yeah. I know. I can tell you what I did with it, but not maybe with everybody else. Yeah.
After hours.
After hours, yeah. But I think that was absolutely excellent. Thank you all as well for coming along. Thank you all for your contribution and your questions and your participation. You really are what makes the WUN event so amazing. We have pre-recorded this session, so we'll probably edit out just the last bit with all your names on, but the actual presentation and talk that Caroline done will be available as well. So just finally, before everybody just hops off, I just wanted to quickly just remind everybody, if you haven't gone and looked at our new website, please do go and have a look at the website. You'll get all of our events and information there as well. And you'll also get blogs and links to the blogs and the podcasts as well. So I'm trying to find my mouse to move on. It's not doing it now for some reason. So yeah, any of the podcasts and all of these recordings, etc., everything that we do is available there. So once again, thank you so much for coming along today, and enjoy the rest of your week. See you next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks
nice to meet you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.